Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
That is really, really good news.
A new incentive in hopes of helping with the paramedic shortage, but it comes with concerns. Plus, strong words from the chief of a BC First Nation toward the VPD and why there's still hope.
Life is precious, you know, and these little kids are even more so.
How a BC wine is helping to save children's lives half a country away.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Tonight, the province is trying to make improvements to paramedic shortages that have plagued BC communities for years. It's offering up a new deal to procure more staff. As Joel Ballard reports, BC Emergency Health Services is ditching its $2 an hour on-call pay rate, at least temporarily.
This summer, the town of Ashcroft was hit with a pair of tragedies. The details, strikingly similar. 2 seniors died of cardiac arrest while waiting for an ambulance about a half hour away.
It really had a lot of people, not only in Ashcroft, but in the area served by the Ashcroft ambulance station, worried about, well, what if this happens to me?
Ashcroft has 1 full-time ambulance and a second vehicle staffed for half the day. The rest of the time, on-call workers are expected to cover it. But with severe paramedic shortages across the province, Roden admits keeping it staffed is an issue. To combat that, the province announced a bump to on-call pay, jumping from $2 an hour to $12.
So this increases the incentive for people to take on those on-call shifts, which is important in establishing services there.
In BC, on-call paramedics are paid a base wage, now $12. Once they are called out, that wage then jumps to their regular pay.
I think that is really, really good news. Everyone who I've ever talked to who heard about the $2 an hour model just would shake their heads and say, you have to be kidding.
The new agreement is only temporary until the end of the year or until the province and union reach a more permanent deal in contract negotiations. Still, smaller communities see it as a step forward, like Clearwater, which only has 1 ambulance.
Honestly, it's quite terrifying because you don't know when the accident or the incident's going to happen. You can't schedule your emergencies. It doesn't work that way.
The union says the deal will likely alleviate some pressures on the system, but it's not a solution, adding that 50% of scheduled on-call shifts are not filled across the province.
That precarious on-call model is not sustainable. We need to move towards full-time and more substantial wages and benefits for the whole shift that they're working, whether they're on call or not.
Under the agreement, paramedics will also be paid at a double overtime rate for overtime or recall shifts on evenings and weekends, in hopes of beefing up service not just in small communities, but major centers as well. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Coquitlam.
Let's take you to Bella Bella now, where tense emotions overflowed at a ceremony that was supposed to bring closure to an Indigenous man, his granddaughter, and their community. The pair was wrongfully arrested at a BMO in Vancouver 2 years ago. The 2 arresting officers didn't show up for a planned in-person apology last night in Bella Bella. Angela Starrett is there and tells us Heiltsuk leaders now have strong words for the VPD.
2 seats left empty in place of where the Heiltsuk expected Mitchell Tong and Cannon Wong to sit. They're the VPD officers who arrested Maxwell Johnson and his granddaughter. The news of the absentee officers hit the Heiltsuk people hard.
There's no going back. In order for us to move forward, we've got to do it together. In the unfortunate circumstances, we can't do that tonight, for the reasons of 2 people that are absent.
Brown says the nation extended multiple invitations to the officers, and under Heiltsuk law, the apology couldn't happen without those 2 specific officers. For Johnson, it's more than just breaking Heiltsuk law, it's a missed opportunity for justice and healing.
I was getting anxiety attacks, and then I get depression, and then I was getting suicidal. You know, we were supposed to have that ceremony today, but we can't now.
While the apology feast didn't go forward, Heiltsuk leaders had an uplifting ceremony for Johnson's family to help them heal from the incident. And during that, hereditary chiefs had words for Vancouver Police Chief Adam Palmer, who, in a CBC story, said the two arresting officers weren't racist.
I heard that the Vancouver City Police Chief said that there was no racism in that police department. And yet, this tribunal found that there was. In all due respect, I can't accept this gift.
In Bella Bella, Palmer told the CBC that the officers didn't attend for personal reasons. And despite the strong reaction from the community, Palmer said the night still resonated with those in attendance.
This ceremony tonight was very powerful, it was impactful, and we want to move forward in a positive way with the Heiltsuk Nation.
Will you be sending your officers back here to go through the formal apology process with the Heiltsuk Nation?
Well, that's something that we're going to work through with our union and with the officers, and we'll see if we can come to a resolution on that.
The Heiltsuk Nation is hopeful Mayor-elect and soon-to-be Vancouver Police Board Chief Ken Sim will help with the reset and a redo on the apology ceremony to finally bring some closure. Angela Sterrett, CBC News, Bella Bella, British Columbia.
And outgoing Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart, meanwhile, says he's disappointed in how Maxwell Johnson and his granddaughter have been treated in the years after their wrongful arrest, and he feels the officers should have been present.
To reconcile is to admit fault, to discover truth, and I think that truth is still is a bit buried here.
Stewart has also been serving as the chair of Vancouver's police board. He says of all the city departments, the VPD has the most work to do when it comes to reconciliation. Well, charges are being recommended against a Surrey man accused of issuing death threats against a popular CNN host. CBC is not naming the man, as he has not yet been charged in relation to the alleged online campaign, which centered on news anchor Erin Burnett, her family, and CNN employees. Court documents show the FBI, the New York Police Department, and Interpol have all contacted the RCMP with concerns about the accused. The suspect allegedly told investigators that he, quote, rants like everyone else and that he is not a credible threat. He was arrested and released on conditions in July. BC Prosecution Service confirms that it is assessing charges against him. Well, Premier John Horgan has given his final CBC interview as he looks back at his time in office. He spoke to CBC Radio's On the Island with host Gregor Craigie.
The honor of my life to be in the office of the Premier for the past 5.5 years, trying to do my best to affect positive change for people, not just in my community, but across the province. And I regret not a minute of it. I've been reflecting on that question more, Gregor, since it's been asked so frequently in the past couple of weeks.
Earlier this year, Horgan announced he would step down as Premier after successful treatment for throat cancer. Last week, his successor, David Eby, was declared NDP leader. Horgan says although he is proud of his accomplishments, he admits he made a mistake trying to rebuild Victoria's Royal BC Museum at a time when British Columbians were thinking of other concerns like healthcare. A high-profile Métis lawyer is questioning the University of British Columbia's response to a CBC investigation concerning Mary-Ellen Turpel-Lafond. The story raised questions about Turpel-Lafond's claims to Indigenous ancestry. For decades, the former Children and Families watchdog in BC has said she was a Treaty Indian of Cree ancestry. CBC's investigation is questioning that ancestry. Turpel-Lafond has provided no evidence to corroborate her claims. She ran UBC's Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Center until recently, and in a statement to media, the university indicated it wouldn't comment on her ancestry because it wasn't considered to be one of the criteria for that position. Lawyer Jean Taylor doubts that.
That is not plausible to my mind. I think that the chances of them hiring a non-Indigenous person in that role are zero. Absolute, in this day and age, zero.
She said she suspects the university is playing word games in order to avoid controversy. She urges UBC to be transparent rather than attempting to sweep this issue under the rug. UBC says even though being Indigenous isn't a requirement for the job, it did consider what it calls relevant Indigenous experience. Okay, you're going to want to see this footage. It's dramatic video of a 10-meter-long humpback whale entangled in fishing gear leaping to freedom. Now watch the bottom of your screen now for the moment the whale finally bursts free after hours of a dramatic rescue that used everything from a drone, a satellite, a team of experts, and finally acrobatics from the whale itself. Now, the rescue happened in the Strait of Georgia last Thursday. The whale was caught in around 90 meters of polysteel rope along with a buoy and prawn fishing gear. Members of the Pacific Marine Mammal Rescue Team tracked the whale for around 4 hours before that dramatic moment when it was set free. Despite the commotion caused by the boats, the whale's 2 companions stayed by its side the entire time. That is rare behavior for humpback whales. Well, October is a busy time in the Okanagan and interior wine country, especially this year. It's a late harvest, and growers say the long summer heat could produce a spectacular vintage. But one Karameas winery has bottled a unique spirit as a way to remember a relative lost to congenital illness. As Tom Popick explains, the wine has an added benefit of helping to save children's lives halfway across the country.
It's harvest time at Courcelles Winery in the Similkameen Valley, and this year's fruit on the vine will make spectacular wine.
Quality's up, volume's up. It is one for the books for us.
But October has become a bittersweet month for Charlie Basler. In 2020, his phone rang.
It was a horrible moment. You know, my brother was even had a hard time explaining to me the situation over the phone, and when he got the words out, I remember, falling to a knee in the vineyard.
Charlie's niece, Olivia, just a week short of her 5th birthday, had died in Manitoba. The little girl had struggled with a congenital illness since birth, enduring surgeries at Brandon, Manitoba's regional hospital. Her parents, John and Crystal, and family across Canada watching Olivia grow, laugh.
Oh, you're good, honey. Keep pedaling. Don't stop pedaling.
And battle until the last breath.
Yeah, Olivia was full of life, you know. She really enjoyed the short minutes that she had, yeah.
So in this vineyard, after that call, Charlie planted a new seed.
We stopped work. Literally, the tools were dropped.
That day's Syrah harvest was gathered, pressed, and poured into one very special barrel, Olivia's barrel.
225 liters.
Now, after a 2-year rest, the wine has been bottled in remembrance of little Olivia, Olivia the Brave.
It's bigger than grapes, and it's bigger than wine. It's embodied with spirit and purpose.
Bold and bright, this vintage also comes with a goal. All sales of the wine are being donated.
There's a lot you can buy for $30,000.
Brandon Health Center's Director of Operations has already purchased a life-saving respirator for the pediatric unit where Olivia was treated. Regional hospitals, whether in Brandon or BC, often struggle for money. Out-of-province donations are rare. The BC Wineries fundraising is bringing Manitoba patients closer to home.
When you can start to have some of this equipment, it makes it easier for the families, not only the patient, but the families as well, right? So they're not constantly having to travel into Winnipeg to get what should be fairly basic treatment, but sometimes we just don't have that equipment.
For Charlie, bottling wine is just the beginning.
Life is precious, you know, and these little kids are even more so.
With Olivia's vintage almost sold out, the Baslers are thinking up new fundraising ideas. So the vines here can continue to grow hope and health half a country away. Tom Popick, CBC News, Karameas.
Yeah, life is precious, Amy, for sure. But you know, something good, I guess, coming out of this.
Just heartbreaking, but something good to come out of it is nice and heartwarming to see. So yeah, wonderful story.
Yeah. And our weather, something good, perhaps?
Yeah, I suppose, relatively speaking. We had a lot of rain today. It held off for the morning hours, and then we did get very wet once the afternoon arrived, and it was on and off throughout the day, and that's really how we're going to continue to see things for the next several hours. Temperature-wise, definitely was a bit of a cooler one today by a degree or two. 8 degrees right now in Pitt Meadows and in West Vancouver, 7 on Vancouver Island as you're hitting to Nanaimo, and 9 degrees out in the Fraser Valley. Now, Now, over the next few days, we'll catch a bit of a break tomorrow, but then the rain returns Wednesday night and in through Thursday. So we'll see things really getting going on Thursday into Friday. That's when we'll see the majority of that rain arriving. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, but I'll have a full provincial forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, Amy. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, an Abbotsford woman originally from Iran has been trying to help spread the message locally about what's happening in the country she was born in. Anti-Iranian government demonstrations across the world are now into their 6th week. The protests were ignited by the death of Iranian Kurd Mahsa Amini, who died in the custody of morality police in mid-September after being detained for what authorities there call improper attire. Protests erupted at her funeral on September 17th and spread across the world, including right here in BC. Abbotsford resident Sharare Hamid is a regular attendee of those demonstrations and uses her social media accounts to create awareness on the situation in Iran. And Sharare joins me now live to talk about those protests. You know, you came to Canada from Iran when you were just 16 years old, so I imagine you still have quite a connection to the country. How did you feel when you first heard about what was going on there now?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on this show, Anita. This means so much to me and all the Iranians, raising awareness on what's happening back home. Yeah, I moved here when I was 16 with my family, but I have all of my family members back home. I am an Iranian, and in Farsi we say, I am man Iraniyam. And I feel a sense of closeness to home. Seeing my cousins at the front of these protests, I wish nothing but to be with them, protesting and asking and demanding for foundational changes that will impact my future next time that I visit. So it's conflicting that I'm here, but I'm doing my best to do what I can from afar.
How worried are you about your family there?
Very worried, but I'm also aware that this is a generation that holds no fear, Anita. They are basically saying, kill me or give me a future that I so rightfully deserve. And this is the most scary thing for the regime because of this fearlessness that this generation has shown. I am worried, but I'm also extremely hopeful and happy that this is happening.
Yeah, it really has been incredible to watch from the outside and to see how strong the people of Iran have been throughout these protests, knowing what kind of government they have. Can you talk to me about that government a little bit and your experience with them when you were in Iran?
Absolutely. I've been here for the past 16 years or 15 years, but I frequently visit Iran because my family's back home. And I can share with you a personal encounter that I had 2 years ago when I visited Iran with my father. My father was going to visit some of his colleagues at work, and it was a building that was operated by the government. And upon entrance, they didn't allow me to enter the building because my head covering, the hijab, was not sufficient. It was inappropriate. And in so many ways, I think we are all Mahsa Amini. It could have been me. It could have been every other Iranian that wore inappropriate hijab. But in that moment, I realized that this is a mentality that oppresses women and every other person in Iran. And it frightened me as I looked at him. He did that because he works for a regime that allows him to do that. Mahsa Jina died because they knew they could kill her and get away, but this time they didn't.
Thinking back to your experience and seeing what's happening there now, how have you felt seeing the world's response and seeing British Columbians respond to this?
My goodness, it's been overwhelmingly amazing to see how much empathy exists in our hearts. And I think that's when I see this interconnectedness that we feel living on this globe that we share. And that we can all relate to the voices of freedom. We can all relate to the voices of oppression, because I know every single one of us, regardless of religious backgrounds, minorities, ethnic backgrounds, language, any barriers that sets us apart, we can relate to this request for freedom.
And just quickly here, what is next for the movement here in British Columbia, Canada, and what you're a part of?
As long as Iranians are back home, showing up and fighting for freedom, so will we. Our job as Iranians outside of Iran is to continue echoing the voices of Iranians within. to support them, to amplify what they're asking, and to respond to their needs. And pray that people in Iran find their place, whether it is leadership within all those intellectuals and highly capable individuals who have been imprisoned for many, many years since the Islamic Republic came to leadership, to athletes and actors who have been protesting side by side their countrymates, that they will come to find their place within the country and form a system that respects democracy and human rights.
Shada, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, Ukraine's success in the war has relied on some ingenuity and a simple device, how the country has turned everyday drones into military weapons. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. There's a new home in Windsor, Ontario, made out of 8 shipping containers that will soon house 10 LGBTQ youth. It started out as an innovative way to create housing quickly, but the project ended up being delayed by 2 years. Jason Vayu explains.
It's taken us way longer than what we actually thought.
When construction started in April of 2020, Family Services Windsor Essex wanted to have the 6 units opened by the end of that summer. It's now more than 2 years later, and 10 young people will be moving in by the end of this month.
We need to look at any ways to get more housing into the market.
That's what prompted the Social Services Agency to build its own housing for the first time. But what they didn't expect were all the delays.
It was really hard to get contractors. Then as we moved into what I like to call a post-COVID acuity world, we had issues with supply chain.
The project cost $1.2 million, and 2/3 of that was funded through a provincial program. Another reason for the delays, Family Services says the province's building code hasn't caught up to innovations such as container homes. But one urban designer says it's a balancing act.
And the innovation needs to be tested to meet with the code. So they both have a little give and take to do.
He's mostly seen shipping containers used as commercial spaces and doesn't believe this concept has a big role to play in solving the housing crisis.
The cost of outfitting them is probably the biggest impediment. As I mentioned, you have to build interior walls, you have to put in insulation, you have to do structure around openings for windows.
Inside, you can see the 2 shipping containers fused together to make a 2-bedroom unit. Family Services says they focused on LGBTQ youth because there is an unusually high number of them who find themselves homeless.
But we thought if we really want to reach those youth that are least likely to secure permanent housing on their own, we should have a focus on trying to house youth who identify as LGBTQ2+.
They'll range in age from 16 years old to 24, and it's meant to be temporary housing until they can find a place of their own. Family Services will only be charging them what they get from the Ontario Works program for housing, which is roughly $300 per month. The agency is working on 2 other housing projects with the Community Housing Corporation to put a roof over the heads of even more young people. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
Russia-Ukraine war, we've seen lots of drone footage. Ukrainian forces especially have been regularly posting drone video of their victories online as a kind of psychological warfare. The CBC's Justin Ling finds out how this Ukrainian strategy has made crucial impact.
When Russia steamrolled its way into Ukraine last February, it was supposed to be a pretty quick fight. They had a massive advantage. More manpower, more technology, more money, and more fighter jets, crucially. As the war began, Russia bombarded Ukraine with aerial attacks. It turns out that Ukraine has an ace up its sleeve, changing what was supposed to be a short and brutal conflict into an 8-month struggle for survival. Tonight, we're going to show you one of the ways in which they've managed to change the momentum of this war. They've built an army of drones, tiny unmanned aerial vehicles and large attack drones that have given them the advantage and helped turn the tide of this war. It's only been through support of its allies, particularly in NATO, that Ukraine has managed to build what it now calls an army of drones. After the initial onslaught from Russia, Turkey stood up and delivered a shipment of Bayraktar TB2 drones to Ukraine. Pretty quickly after these Turkish-made drones arrived, messaging app Telegram lit up with visuals of Ukraine taking out Russian warships, supply boats, ammunition depot, and even recapturing Snake Island, the strategically important base in the Black Sea. As Ukraine started racking up wins with these TB2 Turkish-made drones, Russia started getting better at shooting them down. It became pretty clear pretty quickly to Ukraine that if they were going to retake the skies, they were going to need more drones, a lot more drones. So they came up with a pretty clever idea.
Together, let's build an army of drones to help protect the people of Ukraine and to regain their peace and independence.
So they put the call out to the international community, asking every foreign government, every association, business, and even individuals, if you can send us a drone, if it can fly, we'll take it. If you don't have a drone, send us the money and we'll buy it ourselves. I even got the chance to speak with one Ukrainian drone operator who was in Kiev just back from the front lines. He underscored just how critically important and strategically useful these drones were.
When the project Army of Drones started, they start collect all drones what civilian people have in their houses and in their apartments, and they start buying a lot of drones from other countries because they have a lot of donations, and they collected a lot of a really big army of drones. And now some drone and we need something, we just call, and next day they send us all of we want. You know, it's great project.
What are you able to do with this, you know, this huge complement of drones that you wouldn't be able to do without them? You know, how has it really shaped Ukraine's defenses?
Russian troops can be 2 kilometers in front of us or 3 kilometers. We start reconnaissance, we find, and we start to use military drones with a bomb, and we start hit them as far as we can. They save a lot of lives of our soldiers because Russians, they use a lot of artillery, you know, and when they start use artillery and once in the sky, we can find their artillery and we can send this information to Ukraine.
Just days after we spoke, the Ukrainian armed forces mounted a surprise counteroffensive to the east of Kharkiv, recapturing over the course of several days and weeks thousands of kilometers of their territory, liberating dozens of towns. One thing our drone operator told me was that it will be critical for Ukraine to keep up these shipments of drones if it's going to continue forcing these counteroffensives. We actually got access to one delivery of Chinese-made surveillance drones earlier this month. These drones have been instrumental in giving Ukraine the advantage, the intelligence, the surveillance, and the capacity to take back that territory. But I wanted to get a sense of what the long-term impact of this drone warfare would be. So I called up Paul Lashenko. He's a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army, and he's a PhD candidate at Cornell University. He's also written the book about drone warfare.
So at the tactical level of war, drones, especially these easily weaponized, commercially available drones, have provided Ukraine the ability to exact surprise against Russian forces, which has allowed them to disrupt sort of Russian forces, operational tempo, maneuver, and formation, and to destroy these forces at a scale probably would not have been achieved had drones not been integrated in the conflict.
Many of those drones that Ukraine is deploying are commercial drones. I mean, some of them were literally donated by regular folks in North America and Europe, drones you could have went and bought at any electronics store.
Ukraine has had to do this to gain parity with a larger scale military that by all accounts should have marched onto Kiev and installed a new regime. And by way of that, they have done things that have just kind of put Russia in kind of on the back foot.
In recent weeks, Russia has got back on the front foot, trying to beat Ukraine at their own game. Thanks to a number of Iranian-made kamikaze drones, Russia has been bombarding Ukrainian cities, particularly the capital of Kiev, basically with these flying bombs. The drone pilot I spoke to said it would be critical for these drones to continue arriving in Ukraine if they're hoping to keep up this pressure. But he also underscored just how important it was for Ukraine to use these drones to show the rest of the world the realities of this war.
When you show it from the drone, they start, wow, it's really working good. We must donate and buy more, and they can crash more Russian base. I have some record from my military position when we dropped the bomb on 2 Russian snipers, and security service sent me the voice message. They catch a voice message from a Russian soldier to his military leadership, and he says, we are scared.
У нас 2 200-х. У нас осталось 10 человек. Мы сейчас просто развернемся нахуй и пойдем отсюда. Дротики летают. Высоко-высоко не видно и кидают всякие штучки.
I think mentally it's changed some mind for Ukrainian people and Russian, because Russians scare drones.
He spent 10 years in a federal prison right here in BC, but near the end, he decided to quite literally get his act together. We tell you about Patrick Keating's road to the silver screen next.
Vancouver's big party came to an end tonight. Expo 86 closed with a spectacular final ceremony, 5.5 months after the gates opened. And already is being called one of the most successful World's Fairs ever, with an astonishing 22 million visitors. Karen Webb reports.
This afternoon's closing celebration began with a series of parades. This one from Canada Place, a motley collection of employees and entertainers who have made the National Pavilion one of the best attended at the exposition. The closing ceremonies were held inside the dome at BC Place. 60,000 British Columbians snapped up the free tickets, and thousands of employees marched into the stadium, pavilion by pavilion.
And the best thing today was to hear that the pavilions of the USSR and the USA came in together.
British Columbia, Canada, I take my hat off to you.
For Jim Pattison, a standing ovation, his second of the summer. Most British Columbians think the man they call Jimmy is single-handedly responsible for the success of the fair.
Thank you.
The party meant the party's over. The last day was different from the days which have gone before it. For the Expo employees, there was one more photograph for the scrapbook. They were in a very good mood this morning, considering tomorrow they won't have a job. The gates opened for the 165th time, and at some point in the morning, the 22 millionth visitor walked in.
Please remember to walk, have a big smile on your face, and enjoy your last day here at Expo.
The last weekend was Expo's busiest, by far. More than 1 million people in the last 4 days. There were times fairgoers could hardly move. Now the debates have begun. Not about whether it was successful, but what kind of success it was.
It's not a local celebration. It's not a carnival. It's an international event of significance in the history of its time.
Jim Pattison won't be answering any more questions. This morning's was his last board meeting. He has resigned effective this midnight. So just like the ticket takers, the bosses lined up to get their pictures taken. And then Pattison said goodbye. Sign this afternoon as well, over and over again. On the Expo site, the cleanup began. Tomorrow they will start to tear it down. Expo 86 has come and gone. Karen Webb, CBC News, Vancouver.
Welcome back. Well, Patrick Keating has seen things in his life that few of us have. He served 10 years in federal prison penitentiaries in Quebec and BC and at Matsqui Prison in the Fraser Valley. Now, he took courses in art and theatre. After his release, he got into fine arts at the program at SFU and built a career on screen and stage. Now, he's sharing those experiences through the film Inside Out, a prison memoir.
Now, I was always told that everything was on file, in the file, my file. I was told, be good, I'll put it in your file. You step outside that line, it's going in your file. My file was supposed to be where my life was kept. I saw it, my file being passed around as I went from sentence to sentence, court to court, prison to prison, official to official, year to year. Every office I went into, every person I talked to, or didn't talk to, they would all make a note in the file. The signpost should be there, visible, clearly marked out. Look, they're the professionals, they're the experts. It should be all mapped out, B, C, D, all the way down the line. I should be able to open them up and see what went wrong, what went right, why I'm here and not there.
Patrick Keating is with me now in studio. And Patrick, you know, we've talked before on the show about the success of rehabilitation programs and courses that are offered to inmates. How did that help you in you succeeding after prison?
When I was inside, there was university courses given. There was first University of Victoria and then Simon Fraser. And one of the courses that I took was theater. Now, I'd never been to a play, didn't know theater at all. My family was not very artistic. But I always wrote in a journal, so I thought, well, we're going to be reading some plays and, you know, we'll do that. But the instructor came in and he wanted to do a full-blown production with clowns. And there's no way. I mean, when you're inside, you have masks on, right? You know, you're tough. You don't
not
have
a clown
emotions.
mask.
Not a clown mask. No red noses, right? But there was a couple of people in the course and that they had really good reputations in the population. I saw them joining in and, you know, wearing the red nose. And I thought, okay, if they can act like a fool, so can I, right? And so I did. And a theater company came up, saw the play, and said if we wanted a push in the right direction when we got out, we should give them a call. And I did.
So I want to get to that in a moment, but I think for me, I mean, I had no idea that this sort of thing would be happening in prison, you know, inmates actually acting in a play, clowns involved. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you find that people have about prison?
Mainly that there's so much in, you know, newspapers and through politicians that everybody inside, it's all this, they're all the same, right? We're all horrible monsters, right? And that we're the other. And really everybody inside is not relinquish them of responsibility for what they did, but everybody inside is somebody's brother, somebody's father, somebody's sister, somebody's mother. You know, we're all just human.
That's the message you're hoping to get across in...
Very much so. Yeah, try to put a human face on the incarcerated.
And what has the response been like so far to your film?
It's been great, you know. I've been taking it around. At first, it was a one-person play. And I remember taking it into William Head Penitentiary and doing a performance, and there was a very large man sitting in front, and he was just with his arms crossed, glaring at me, and I thought, this guy is not enjoying this at all. But he was the first one up after the performance, came up to me, went to shake my hand, and he started talking, and he stopped, and his eyes started to well up. And he said, I could never find the words. I always tried to find the words to let my family know what it's like in here. I could never find them, but you found them. You've got to keep doing this. And so when COVID hit, there was a call that went out by Canada Council to try and adapt plays to digital. I thought this is a perfect opportunity to do a digital adaptation of the play and then get it inside prisons to incite or entice people to tell their own stories, their own myths, right? Their own truths.
Patrick Keating, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
The federal industry minister has officially denied a proposed deal between Rogers and Shaw Communications. The deal would have allowed Rogers wholesale access to Shaw's wireless frequencies.
Earlier this year, I stated that I would, under no circumstances, permit the wholesale transfer of wireless spectrum licenses from Shaw to Rogers. Today, I officially denied that request, which had been pending before me. My decision formally closed that chapter of the original proposed transaction.
Champagne says he is open to a revised deal. He says he's willing to consider Shaw's sale of Freedom Mobile to Videotron under specific conditions. He says those conditions include Videotron holding those licenses for 10 years and lowering Freedom Mobile prices in Ontario and the West to the same level as Quebec prices, which he says are about 20% lower. Okay, a severe labor shortage in this country's manufacturing sector cost the Canadian economy almost $13 billion over the past year. That's according to an industry group survey of nearly 600 companies in 17 industries nationwide. The annual survey by Canadian manufacturers and exporters found that 4 in 5 companies are facing shortages. It says they're having trouble finding skilled tradespeople, such as welders, mechanics, industrial mechanics as well. The group says it's being hit by the retirements of aging baby boomers and a lack of interest in manufacturing jobs from young Canadians. Well, he began his career as a college dropout, but rapper and fashion designer Kanye West now finds himself dropped by 2 key collaborators. We'll tell you why Adidas and Gap, among others, have opted to cut ties with the Grammy winner.
I want to thank you guys for coming out here today because you guys made a choice to be here. So it means a lot. You know,
if it wasn't for you guys for coming out here, we wouldn't be here. So make some noise for your guys' selves one time.
Yeah. One time.
Yes.
Let's go. Turn up the beat. Let's go.
So when this comes, I need all y'all energy. You ready? Ready? Okay.
If you're ready, give me a yeah. One more time, yeah.
Cape Town, got a dash. I'ma drop a juke, yeah, cool like fast. Put me in, coach, yeah, I gotta play. I be dancing circles like a relay, yeah. I be dancing circles like a relay. Watch it slow-mo like a screenplay. Numbers be going up like speedway. Yeah, like speedway. Switch splash. Game time, got a dash. I'ma drop a juke, yeah, cool like fast. Put me in, coach, yeah, I gotta play. I be dancing circles like a relay, yeah. I be dancing circles like a relay. Watch it slow-mo like a screenplay. I be ballin' on the weekday. I be ballin' on the weekday, yeah. Listen. I just called them made a play. Yeah. Listen up and go engage. What? Stir it up and eat your brain. Stack it up, your best relate. These days relay. I just made a highlight replay. Bring it back like a point of three phase. Yeah. Make it last with the honey sweet taste. What? With the head, the other cheapskates. Anyways, get up, go create. Go. Get that big bag. These don't need to go complain. Come alive, play you like a game. Everything you new day, stay at a high rate. Yeah, let's go. Like a flash. If you feel with your vibe, you don't need to go and save. Leave it later in the night, make it getting kinda late. With my dip and the dip and the grooving with the cake. You say splish splash. Game time, gotta dash like a Bruce Wayne. I'ma drop a juke, yeah, quick like fast. Put me in, coach, yeah, I gotta play. Gotta play. I be dancing circles like a relay, relay. Yeah, I be dancing circles like a relay. Watch it slow mo like a screenplay. I be going up like speedway. Splish splash, game time, gotta dash. I'ma drop a juke, yeah, quickly flash. Put me in, coach, yeah, I gotta play. I be dancing circles like a relay, relay. Yeah, I be dancing circles like a relay, relay. Watch it slow mo like a screenplay, screenplay. I be on a weekday, yeah. Relay. I just made a highlight replay. It's the weekday, but we still be ballin' on the weekday.
Yeah. Once again, thank you for all being here. Thank you for all standing. Thank you. Make some noise for yourself. Make some noise for yourself.
The BC Sports Hall of Fame has announced its class of 2023. Inductees include ski cross Olympian Kelsey Surwa, NFL Super Bowl winner Mitch Berger, and longtime Canuck Dennis Kearns. Kearns spent his entire 10-year career as a defenseman for the Canucks. He played from 1971 to 1981.
It's a huge honor. I was very, very surprised to get the call. However, I'm very, very happy to be a member of this BC Sports Hall of Fame.
Jake Kerr and Jeff Mooney, the longtime owners of the Vancouver Canadians baseball team, were also honored with a WAC Bennett Award. The official induction ceremony will be taking place in June. All right, fireworks can typically be a big part of Halloween and Diwali celebrations at this time of year, but when it comes to where you can actually set them off in BC, it really varies. Some cities ban fireworks entirely because of drought, complaints from pet owners, and property damage. Other cities allow fireworks with a pretty easy-to-get permit costing between $5 and $35 and only allowing you to set them off between 6 and 11 p.m. on Halloween. And then there's a third category, cities that allow fireworks, but only after a complicated certification process. So these are some of the cities banning them completely: Victoria, Vancouver, Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, Chilliwack, Kelowna, and Kamloops. Burnaby, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Port Moody, Prince George. Those are some of the cities that are actually allowing the fireworks with a permit. But you'll see there in yellow places like Surrey, Richmond, the Langleys, and Abbotsford. It's just to name a few. You actually have to go through a pretty complicated process to get that permit. Okay, what about you, Amy Bell? Setting off any fireworks?
I have not. I like to keep all these fingers, and that probably wouldn't happen if I set one off. But enjoy them. Just maybe knock them off before some of us have to go to bed early.
Yeah, you know, I think like an 8:30, 9 o'clock fireworks show.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then done.
Yeah, get in bed early and we're good to go. All right.
Perfect.
So no fireworks with our weather.
No, and in fact, looking ahead to sort of Halloween will be one of the next big fireworks nights. It will be wet, so that does definitely put a damper, literally and figuratively, on fireworks. We are still dealing with a lot of showers, and they'll be on and off for the next while. Tomorrow morning will start off dry, so that is great news. We could even see some sunshine, but then we will head into much more precipitation. So we have this next system setting up, and that's going to make its way, bringing a lot of precipitation in the form of rain, especially to the north and central coast areas of Vancouver Island. Mountain passes along Highway 3 in the Coquihalla will see snow, and we'll get more snow up at the top of Whistler Mountain. So that is all good news. But yes, it is going to be very, very wet after a brief break for tomorrow. We will start off, though, with those clearer conditions across Vancouver Island and then even out into the Fraser Valley, and it'll be quite late in the day when we do start to see those showers at this point. Prince George, a mixed bag, and you'll see some wet flurries in Dease Lake, and you will get some flurries as well tomorrow in Cranbrook, and then you'll warm up to a high around 9 degrees. And yes, as you can see, that wet weather does return and just keeps ramping up for Thursday, Friday. Actually, Saturday we could see some clouds and a drier trend before we get back into heavier rain on Sunday, and yes, Halloween on Monday will most certainly be wet.
You win some, you lose some.
You got to put a rain jacket over your costume, kids.
You know, Halloween always feels like it's either really cold or really wet.
It's true. It's time of year.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Well, Adidas and Gap have cut ties with Kanye West, who now goes by the name Ye. They're the latest companies to drop sponsorship deals with the musician, who has courted controversy for years. As Lisa Shing reports, it follows his anti-Semitic posts on Twitter earlier this month.
We about to get down. Who the hottest in the world right now?
Once a music powerhouse turned iconic fashion designer, Kanye West was seemingly untouchable. He said as much himself a week ago.
The thing about it, me and Adidas, is like, I could literally say anti-Semitic and they can't drop me. I could say anti-Semitic things and Adidas can't drop me. Now what?
But the German brand did just that today, cutting off all business and pulling product from shelves, despite it being a lucrative deal. West's popular Easy line of shoes and clothes generated about 7% of the company's total revenue. In a statement, Adidas said it does not tolerate anti-Semitism and any other sort of hate speech. Ye's recent comments and actions have been unacceptable, hateful, and dangerous. Some say Adidas didn't act quickly enough. It's been more than 2 weeks since he posted an anti-Semitic comment on Twitter, which quickly locked his account.
I don't know why it took Adidas so long to respond. A lot of other brands were quick to remove themselves.
Those brands include fashion house Balenciaga, talent agency CAA has cut ties with him, and a recent documentary that's already been completed about Ye's life has been shelved.
The reason why they took so long probably is because they were very attached to their financial statements.
But this communication strategist says parting ways is ultimately good business.
Consumers and employees want to hear brands on societal issues. They want brands to take a stand.
Especially since comments can fuel real-world events, like in LA, where a group gathered last weekend on a highway overpass holding this anti-Semitic banner.
He is normalizing anti-Semitism at a time, as you've mentioned, when anti-Semitic acts and hate crimes are already at historic levels.
It isn't just Adidas that cut ties today. The Gap finalized its breakup, saying it's ending its Easy Gap line. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
19 years ago, the great basketball player LeBron James was meant to play his first NBA game in, wait for it, Newfoundland. How it all went wrong and efforts to make it right are next.
Every day that she wakes up is a gift.
Debbie Shador wants to spend as much time as she can with her 1-month-old grandchild. Despite being so close, Shador and many other extended family members can't see Olivia Gagnon, who has a life-threatening condition.
It's really hard. Like, I live blocks away, yet I can't even see my granddaughter. You know, we don't know that, if she goes to sleep, she's not going to wake up. We don't know if she's going to be here tomorrow or an hour from now. We just don't know. It just seems so inhumane and cruel.
Breaks my heart. I never got to hold my granddaughter.
Olivia was born at London Health Sciences Centre last month and diagnosed with trisomy 18, also known as Edwards syndrome. The rare genetic condition causes severe developmental delays, birth defects, and organ issues. Only half of the babies born with this severe illness survive the first 6 to 9 days. It's unclear how long Olivia has to live. In London, the family said anyone could visit Olivia, but that hasn't been the case at Windsor Regional Hospital, where the family is now. Windsor Regional only allows 2 people in the neonatal intensive care unit. Exemptions can be made for babies that are dying, but right now, Olivia is not considered palliative.
We don't want people to go up there and see her on her deathbed.
We don't want it to be her dying to be able for her family to see her. Like, she should be able to see her family while she's alive.
Grandparents, great-grandparents, a half-sister, and others have lost time with Olivia. Some haven't even met her. Windsor Regional Hospital says the policy is in place to protect vulnerable babies against diseases that might be brought in, and that the neonatal intensive care unit doesn't have private rooms.
What we want to be sure of is that we're focused on that baby and the best thing for that baby. And the visitation is secondary to the care, right? So we have to keep our babies safe, we have to keep our staff safe, we have to keep our parents safe, and we have to support those babies to get them home, right? That is our priority in the hospital.
One advocate says this situation is hard as hospitals are under a lot of strain, but she says the healthcare system also needs to be empathetic.
The worst thing that can happen is that hospitals use restrictive visitor policies for their ease because they don't want to be bothered with the families. But healthcare is about providing care for the patients. And so where the policies have, veered into being too restrictive, into losing sight of compassion, we have to push back.
Olivia's family hopes speaking out will change the situation.
Not only for Olivia, but for any baby who has a terminal illness. This is ridiculous. Like, there should be something that can happen.
Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Well, it may have been the greatest game that just slipped away. The NBA debut of one of the best ever, LeBron James, and it was actually set to happen in Canada against the Toronto Raptors in Newfoundland. But the event was, well, a washout. The memory of that night remains strong for the fans who were there 19 years ago. As Zach Gowdy shows us, one of them, who was a teenager at the time, is now campaigning for a do-over.
It's a good story. It's a good story in the sense that it's legendary and how it all came together and fell apart.
And here we are 19 years later, and we're still talking about it.
October 23rd, 2003. In St. John's, it was going to be a night to remember. The city was hyped up for its first ever NBA game. The Toronto Raptors, with their superstar Vince Carter, taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers with this guy playing his first NBA game. Maybe you've heard of him, LeBron James. The sellout crowd had come from all over the province to see history in the making.
I'm originally from Pasadena, so me and a bunch of friends from high school, we scraped together enough money for tickets and for a hotel room, and then we convinced a father to drive us out. So we came out, big basketball fans our whole lives, and then you get a chance to see LeBron James debut. What's not to love about that?
But as the fans poured into the stadium then known as Mile 1, something was wrong, and the pros knew it.
I'm Glenn Grunwald. I'm the former general manager of the Toronto Raptors and the New York Knicks. So I had walked into the arena late with the owner, Larry Tannenbaum, and the place was buzzing. It was great. And but then I noticed that all the ball boys were on the floor with towels mopping things up. And what's going on? What's the problem?
The problem was that an unusually humid October day, combined with the ice under the floorboards, was creating condensation, a slippery mess all over the court.
So you go to the stadium, you're amped up, players are warming up, and then there's a delay and another delay, and then there's a bunch of kids on the floor with towels wiping up something. We didn't know what was going on.
Then the game got delayed as they tried to, mop up the moisture, and it kind of just sort of the air went out of the balloon kind of very slowly.
Finally, after running out of towels and ideas, they thrust the mic into Glenn Grunwald's hand to say the words no one wanted to hear.
It is with great regret that we can't play this game.
Instead of getting to see the greatest player of his era play his first NBA game, the fans got their money back.
Thank you very much.
19 years later, Matthew Brake and his buddies were reminiscing about the game that wasn't in their group text when Brake had an idea. Maybe he could convince the Raptors to come back and try again.
You know, anything's possible on Twitter. So you're thinking of a good hashtag and how can you associate the Raptors with Newfoundland? So you come up with the idea, hashtag Raptors to the Rock. And then, you know, Carl English quote tweeted it, said he was going to work on it. And then Vince Carter quote tweeted it and said he remembered that day, and it was just, you know, it was phenomenal.
Next year will be the 20th anniversary of that wet and wild night. The stadium has a new name. The Raptors have won an NBA championship, but King James is still playing. There's still time for a legendary do-over.
Here's hoping you get that do-over, Newfoundland. Good luck to that. Okay, the annual pumpkin regatta has returned to northern Belgium. The pumpkin paddlers take to the water in a small pond about 80 kilometers northeast of Brussels. Teams of 4 compete in a relay to get their gourd around a hut in the middle of the pond and back to the starting line. The contest was launched about 20 years ago as a way to use the giant pumpkins that had been grown for agricultural competitions. The boats are freshly carved the morning of the races. I love that. I didn't know that there were that many gigantic pumpkins and that people could actually go and race them. Amazing stuff. Okay, that is CBC Vancouver News on this Tuesday night. Thanks for being with us. I'm away for the next week, so I leave you with Leanne and Dan. Good night.